When we think about cruising New England, pretty much we think about Maine. We didn't make it to Maine this summer. We're still completely in love with cruising in New England. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm talking about 4 incredible reasons that we love cruising in New England and can't wait to get back there next year. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by MantisMarine.com, maker of the Mantis Anchor, now available in models with and without a roll bar. Proven to set reliably in the most challenging bottoms, the Mantis Anchor digs like no other, making anchoring safer and boating more enjoyable. Mantis Marine brings to market practical, durable, and affordable marine products, including anchoring gear, scuba diving accessories, and a rechargeable, waterproof headlamp for hands-free lighting. Visit MantisMarine.com and see for yourself. Ever since we started planning our summer's cruise, Maine was our destination. That's where we wanted to get to. We thought the rest of New England was going to kind of be okay, but not anything great. After having spent a way shorter period of time cruising in New England than we wanted to, I'm happy to report that we love cruising in New England, even though we never got anywhere north of Martha's Vineyard. Cruising in New England has captured our hearts in a way that we never, ever expected. Yes, there are a couple of drawbacks, but for the most part, it's just sheer amazingness. For starters, the water is blue. There's not the Chesapeake brown. Except for the rare jaunt up the river. When we went up to Essex, we did see that kind of brown river. But in New England, there's the dark blue of deep water. There's a light blue-green that indicates a sandy bottom. There are patches of visible from far away brown that indicate there's rock to avoid. Mostly, you're just sailing in blue water. It's amazing. Another thing that we didn't expect is that the terrain is so incredibly varied. In New England, you see riverbanks and fields, and then craggy, sheer cliffs. You can go from Essex, Connecticut, where you've gone up the Connecticut River, and then you go sailing up the Narragansett Bay, and you have these incredible, just sheer cliffs. There are rock islands, like the Thimble Islands, and wide beaches. All of these things within a day sail of each other. If you want to explore towns, you can. If you want to anchor off of uninhabited islands, you can. Each one of those has its own flavor. And even each little town has its own flavor. We didn't get any place in Martha's Vineyard other than to Vineyard Haven. But we'd read a number of people, and my cousin who lives there, the first thing that she said when she picked us up was, if you go to any of the 3 main towns, Martha's Vineyard is tiny. There's Vineyard Haven, there's Oak Bluff, and there's Edgartown. And apparently each one of those 3 towns on this very small island has its own very, very, very unique vibe. That's amazing. The boat watching in New England is superb. There have been so many places where we just took the dinghy around in an afternoon and had to pick our jaws up from the bottom of the dinghy just because we saw so many cool boats. We saw amazing fishing boats. We saw amazing tugs. We saw amazing schooners and wooden boats and beautiful steel boats. Fleets of non-suches. We have no idea why there's so many non-suches up in New England, but there are places you go in and you see 5 or 6 of these boats. There's something to gawk at from a boating perspective everywhere you turn, and it's awesome. The sailing has completely blown us away. Now, there might be something to the fact that we were cruising in New England in August and September. It might be that we finally have decent sails, including a nice, awesome light air Code Zero that we've used a lot. But most days we had wind to move the boat. And that's pretty different from what we usually have in the Chesapeake in the summertime, because the Chesapeake in the summertime, at least in the southern Chesapeake, is often pretty windless and hot. We also have seen many, many, many more boats actually sailing up in New England and Long Island Sound, as opposed to just motoring on perfect wind days, which in a lot of places, that's what we're used to seeing, is sailboats going in a direction that would be great sailing, and they're just motoring. We've discovered places that we'd never heard about, like the Thimbles. We've been awed by others that we never expected to be awed by, Newport among them. Explored the beaches on Block Island. Walked towns like Essex. Watched sunsets everywhere. We've only scratched the very bare surface of New England cruising, and we will definitely be back. We never expected it to be as amazing as it was. There are a few things that we need to get used to and think about, and our list is already growing for what we need to have on board when we go back. One of the things is ticks. Lyme disease was, I think, first diagnosed in Lyme, Connecticut, and that's where it gets its name. And there's so many of the deer ticks that carry Lyme's that, at least in Massachusetts, every single trailhead sign, we went to Cuttyhunk, and we were really excited to walk around on the trails. Every single trailhead sign had a prominent laminated flyer warning of ticks. Well, we don't have any shoes other than flip-flops, and we don't really have long pants that are suitable for hot temperatures, and we didn't have any long white socks. All of these things that they talk about in this laminated flyer on every single trailhead sign. So we actually didn't explore off the road. We're not interested in getting limes, and so our shopping list for next summer's cruising includes some things like lightweight long pants, long white socks, shoes that are not open-toed, and some really good tick repellent. The other two things that we needed to get used to and still need to get used to a little bit, one of those are currents. And being in the Chesapeake, we just aren't, being in the southern Chesapeake, because I think the northern Chesapeake is a little different, we're just not used to currents of any strength. And we noticed in Long Island Sound that, and Buzzards Bay, that if you pay attention to when you will be moving with the current, it means that your sailing day might be a lot shorter. Plus, it's just way more fun to check your speed over the ground when you've got it timed right and you've got 2 knots of current boosting your 6-knot sail. That's kind of awesome. The other thing that's a little bit different up there is mooring fields. There are a lot of harbors that are filled with moorings, and some of those moorings seem to be available for rent from the town itself. Some of them are totally empty, but you're not allowed to pick them up. There are often spaces around areas that don't have any moorings, and it's buoyed off with no anchoring markers. We saw that in both Block Island and the Thimbles. And it was a little strange because I'm sure there's a great reason for it, but we didn't know what it was. And so you couldn't anchor in a lot of places that looked pretty fantastic for anchoring. It felt a little bit like somebody's kind of staking out a great parking place and then putting an orange traffic cone across it, even if they're not there and aren't planning on being there for a long time. We didn't have any trouble finding an anchoring spot that was fine with us, even in places where there are mooring fields, but we may look at maybe budgeting some for moorings if we needed to go into town or wanted to be closer to town. But if we spend money on a mooring, then we don't have money to spend on other things like eating out or renting bikes or exploring in those kinds of ways. So that's just something that we were not used to, because every place in the Chesapeake really is anchoring and you're able to anchor pretty easily. So those are the things that are a little bit different about cruising up there. We, though, haven't even hit what many people call the crown jewel of New England, Maine. We're already totally head over heels in love with cruising up there. New England. Yep, it's a 10 out of 10 and would definitely recommend. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you, whether it's in the Chesapeake or in New England or anywhere in between or outside of the whole United States. And we can share what some of our favorite places are around the world, because isn't that what it's all about? Finding the cool spots that you totally love. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. We love it when you subscribe and don't miss one. And we love it when you share us with your friends, because the more this gets out, the more everybody is happy. Have a great week.